Lonesome Lands Podcast. This is the Lonesome Report. This one was recorded live at the RCAF convention in Deadwood, South Dakota. If you're watching on YouTube, this is a voiceover for the first few seconds here because I had some audio issues. And what I was saying here is that this one is sponsored by From the Farm. From the Farm is putting the reins back in the hands of the ranchers and farmers by linking you straight to the consumer. No middlemen. We need to be price makers, not price takers. Just honest food, dedicated producers, genuine relationships. We're creating the competitive marketplace producers need to thrive, leveling the playing field against corporate giants. From the Farm was founded by A.J. Richards and Brook Rollins, both from southern Utah with deep roots in ranching. Their mission is to help ranchers like you keep more of the food dollar and build a legacy your kids can carry forward, not just to survive, but to thrive. So if you're selling direct, thinking about selling direct, we'd love to serve you at From the Farm. Join the movement at fromthefarm.org. And if you're watching, you can probably see my hand is now up on my computer and clicking our microphones on. So here we go. If you're not familiar with us, I started Lonesome Lands as a website 8 years ago and wrote a few things. Shad sent me some stuff to publish, and I turned them down. And then, it kind of what I realized is that videos and podcasts are getting way more views than anybody reading my stuff. So that's kind of how we've transitioned and how we've ended up here. I've got something messed up on here. Oh, okay, I think we're going now. And so I guess we'll get into it. I guess just to describe what we do, if you haven't heard, we sit down once a week, talk about any sort of thing in the news. It's definitely based on agriculture and the cattle industry, but we kind of get into everything. And what we've been talking about a lot lately is kind of relationships and partnerships that the cattle industry has with different organizations. And one thing, of course, the cattle, the positive in the world, people think we're negative sometimes.
Well, we are kind of.
Too much. But, we are living in a incredibly positive time in the cattle market with record prices, but it's also a time where I feel like we need to be extra vigilant in those partnerships that we make, and so that's a lot of what we've been kind of talking about recently, and we'll just keep going on that, because in the news this week, I guess you want to describe what has came up.
Well, I think there's after being at the RCAF convention, we see a lot of these partnerships that have been, doubled down on between ENGOs and NGOs and agriculture. I think we're on a very dangerous precipice, and we have to choose, which God we're going to serve. And so as we talk about the World Wildlife Fund, the Nature Conservancy, the Bezos Earth Fund, all of these people who have slipped their way into agriculture to form partnerships, and who knows how that's going to, turn out long term, not good. Tracy Hunt outlines that very well. But after we were, studying this a little bit, American Stewards of Liberty sent us a text from Data Republican, and we're talking right in the middle of World Wildlife Fund and their partnership. World Wildlife Fund just this week, this year they received $74 million of the American taxpayer, and they funneled $5 million of that into an organization called Windward Fund, and that organization funneled that money into BVM Building Capacity Institute, which has ties to Black Lives Matter and all of these LA riots. On the opposite side of that, the Nature Conservancy received $125 million, and they funneled $6.2 million of that into a foundation called Liberty Hill, which then funneled that money into the same organization of BVM Building Capacity Institute, all tied to what has been happening across the nation all week. I didn't follow any of that because I think it's a bunch of nonsense. But it just goes to show you how dangerous these partnerships are, and how the ENGOs will sell their soul to the devil to push an agenda. And so I think that is something we need to really keep up with.
So to spell it out, I do a lot of interrupting on here.
Yeah.
To spell it out, there's people in the cattle industry who have partnered with organizations that are funding the LA riots. The Nature Conservancy is, right, one thing we've talked about over the last few weeks, the Nature Conservancy is part of a Food Ag Climate Alliance is what they're called. One of the founding members of that is Farm Bureau. Another member of that is NCBA, National Cattlemen's Beef Association. And then way down the list as a member is World Wildlife Fund.
There's over 90 of those that are members of that organization that have all signed on to the climate change, or as you and Representative Harriet Hagman say, the lie agreed upon.
So, Brook Rollins update.
Yeah, we got a Brook Rollins update. For those that don't know, Brook Rollins was supposed to be here today at the RCAF National Convention. Apparently there was a scheduling conflict. She was unable to come. I took it personal. Nobody else did. That's okay. We're going to go out in Washington, D.C. and meet her very soon because she promised she would meet us, and we're going to hold her to it. So we're going to do that. She was in South Texas yesterday. She rolled out an $8.5 million sterile fly dispersal program. They're going to reinvigorate a facility in Old Mexico and one in South Texas. Of course, we know that there are two legislators that have introduced bills, one out of New Mexico, one out of Texas, to fund the building of a new sterile fly facility in Texas. I'm all for that. She rolled out her 5-prong approach to do that, and that was to stop the spread in Mexico. So we got to partner with them, protect the border at all costs. For me, it was a little bit ironic that we're up here pushing mandatory country of origin labeling. She backs out, she goes down there, and we're going to do what we can to facilitate the border. Hopefully that's not the case, but the sterile fly program is very important. We do not want that at these price levels and the investment our ranchers have at this time to come into this market. We do not need that. The number 3 one was to maximize readiness. We all need to be on that. A lot of these attendees here today talked about they remembered those days. And I've heard a million stories. They were not fun days. She says we're going to take the fight to the screwworm. I don't know if people know that we have taken the fight to the screwworm. I totally support that. Since 1966, we have been funding this, or since 1972. The program has been enacted since 1966. Since 1972, we have been funding the eradication program in South America in partnership with Panama. We can get on top of this fairly quickly. Dr. Max Thornsberry talked about it. In 2016, we actually had an outbreak in Florida. We eradicated that in 1 year. And then number 5, innovation. What can they do new to help do this? So there's a lot of components that go to this, but they are getting on top of it. She said, the U.S. has defeated the New World screwworm before, and we will again. That was a quote from yesterday.
So, Shad's the screwworm expert, but has Mexico... I come up with questions, and sometimes we're not always ready for them. Has Mexico ever funded, like you said, we're funding 100%?
Yeah, I can't tell you that it's 100%, but I'm sure it's way up there. I think we've been the funder of the program.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you were listening, what was it, last week? We talked about
weeks ago.
There's, a cattle feeder in Mexico with kind of a PR campaign of opening the border back up.
Still on a PR campaign.
But they're putting more stuff up?
Yeah. Continue to do.
Tiki-talking.
Yeah, TikTok, all over social media. They want that border opened. I'm sure if I was on their side of the border, I would want it open too. But at these price levels, the American producer, this could be devastating, and I don't think we want to take a chance opening that border until we know it's 100% eradicated. And it's been 100% eradicated. Why not again?
Why does Mexico pay?
Why does America pay for everything, Jim? We're the dumping grounds of the world. Let's face it.
All right. Is that all you got?
That's
oh, my gosh.
That's all I got.
This goes way faster when we're sitting up here. Maybe you talk faster or don't want to talk as much. But to go on to expand on the partnerships, I guess, and what we've heard here over the last couple of days. Alex Newman talked last night, and a number of things he said kind of struck a chord with me. One of the things he said in this climate issue is that one of the things that happened over the last 4 years with the Biden administration and pouring all the money, what was the act called? The Anti-Inflation Act? Is that what it was?
The Inflation Reduction Act.
Inflation Reduction Act. They just dumped tons of money into this climate stuff, and then they pushed it into red states. He's not necessarily a cattle guy, but when I heard that, what I thought was they've taken billions of dollars and pushed them into the cattle industry to get the cattle industry all bought in on this sustainability movement.
And that's because we are the last bastion of freedom. We're the landowners.
Yes.
And so they had to come to us. They've already captured the other organizations. They've already captured the industries. And so they had to come to us now. We knew it was coming. We've known it for 15 years.
Right. And now it seems like maybe we're in a spot where we're getting lackadaisical with the cattle prices and things are good. It's great to be here when things are good. We've been here on the bad years too, but this has been going on for a while. And to go back into those partnerships, there's been a lot of talk about the Angus Association and the petition that was created and all the millions of dollars that they're bringing in for this methane research. And when me and Shad heard about it, we've kind of been neck deep in this stuff for so long, it didn't surprise us at all, and we didn't really even make that big a deal about it. And I want to kind of get into a little bit of where that comes from. In 2021 is when the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and if you remember where the market was in 2021, it was, the worst it people had seen for a long time. And so they came out of their convention with their main priority being that the cattle industry would be climate neutral by 2040. And I don't, what was their measurement? Like they never came out with a measurement of where we were. How do we get there? Anything like that. It was just kind of like.
That's right. Andrea Hutchinson told me, she was at that convention where they adopted sustainable development policy because they knew they had to capture us somehow. And she said, 15 people went into the committee meeting, voted to adopt a sustainable development policy, and 14 of them come out and said, what in the hell did we just vote on?
Right.
So those are the things that have led up to where we're at.
Yeah. And so then in a lot of what brought this to mind, or what the Angus deal reminded me of, in 2023, Tyson Foods had partnered with Adams Land and Cattle, and the plan was, I haven't seen anything since, but they announced that they were going to come out with a climate-friendly line of beef. And the Adams people went around the country and they tried to get people to sign up to kind of track their global or their greenhouse gas emission. Data collection was a big thing for this, and this was around the time where they start pushing that EID mandate. It was the year before, I guess. And so it's very similar to what the Angus Association is dealing with now, all of these things. And then if you go to the Climate Smart Commodity Project and the Trust in Beef program through Farm Journal, that's part of the billions of dollars that were pushed into agriculture. Farm Journal got $40 million, and they created this Trust in Beef program. They are partnered with NCBA and ABS, American Breed Services,
Breeder
right?
Services, yeah.
And then, Ducks
Global,
Unlimited. Yeah.
All of them.
And so the industry has, the Angus Association partnership with Jeff Bezos isn't something new. It's just another thing that woke people up. And
there was some, I'm not sure what the catalyst was on this partnership that really woke people up. Maybe it was because it was an actual breed association that focuses on the very metrics that these people have worked so hard to create in their operation, right? I don't identify with that because I don't care about
the
EPDs.
EPD thing,
right? And so there was a different catalyst that woke people up and said, "Oh, wait a minute! Finally, we gotta address these partnerships. It's very dangerous. In my presentation here yesterday, I identified another organization of ranchers that have taken $90 million from the Bezos Earth Fund in Montana. They're partnering up, right? So what is the catalyst that is going to wake these people up? And Margaret Byfield is great about teaching people about conservation easements. And when you sign up, what does it do to your future, right? And Charles Maud, he told me that he goes to the FSA office. We're thinking private property rights. You sign up for some small program, and in the minute writing, small letters, no, they do have the authority to walk on your land. You lose your property rights, right? That's what the partnerships do. So it's all about the future, right?
Yes. And so I guess that's, brought us into where we are now, where we talked about this Food Ag Climate Alliance. And the one thing that the Angus Association really shows is that, in their plan to partner with Bezos, is that, just because we have an election, and Alex showed the clips last night of Trump calling it a hoax and that he's going to end it and all that stuff, but the cattle industry is still kind of bought in on, or members of it or portions of it have bought in on this sustainability push, and they have, he talked about when they push those billions of dollars to the red states senators came to the climate conference or whatever, and so now we have that in agriculture, and we have the Angus Association and other groups coming to the Bezos Earth Fund and coming to Nature Conservancy and the Food Ag Climate Alliance. And so that's, I guess, just we have an audience of cattle people.
Yeah, and I think the point here is that we're at all-time highs in our marketing scheme. That doesn't mean that we are making the most money we've ever made. It means that we're at all-time highs. Our inputs are at all-time highs as well. But what we have to think about is, where do these partnerships lead us, and how are we going to facilitate that? If you are, if you're wanting to advance yourself through the pay-to-play scheme, sometimes you got to make a choice. Is it going to be about legacy, or is it going to be about the money, right? And that's where we're at today, because we're at such high levels, and I worry that this moment could end up being the greatest catastrophe in our history, because we are so high. And if you own your cows and you're 65, 70, 75, 80 years old, and you're saying, I got $4,000 pairs here, it's time to get out. My assets have value. My land has value, not knowing who that land will go to. Maybe now's the time. Well, on the opposite side of that, those people who are going to take over the land and replenish that operation, if they do, don't have access to that kind of capital. Access to the capital right now is the most important thing on the grassroots level. So there's some balancing and some choice making that we have to do.
Right, and watching, you
have to watch your back is what I'm trying to say, because they know you're vulnerable.
Yeah, as the entire industry, but also, we are at a association's convention, and we know what the association stands for, and that's why we're here. There are people now, like Tracy talked about Common Ground this morning, and we're not saying that they didn't come up with good things, and but one of the things coming out of there is they added a sustainability point that is no longer on their website or anywhere else. Yeah. And I listened on the way over here. I listened to their. They had a round table. They shut our timer off.
I got it.
Oh, there it is. Anyway, they had a round table of people who had been at the Common Ground Summit, mm-hmm. and they talked about how everything was so transparent, but we don't even really know what their goals are now.
Yeah.
Like, they have 5 goals, but there was 6, and the 6 we have heard today was sent out by their press department to these publications that printed that 6th sustainability goal.
Yeah, we don't know where the sixth one came from because on their website, the Common Ground website, there was only 5. They were all great. And then the sixth one showed up in Drover's Journal, Beef Magazine, and all these. And it was the normal sustainable development buy-in. And so we're like, okay, well, who's created this? Is the sixth point, is it by the Common Ground Summit, or is it by another organization that maybe has, speaking for them or infiltrating into them, whatever that may be? But the problem is that was the most important and most identifying point of the 5 or 6 points. So I think that it's important that the Common Ground Summit people, which I liked a lot of their idea, I liked them, Jim, I'm sorry, but they have to identify that sixth measurement, because if that is adopted, it's all just more of the same. It's just bull crap.
And what they're saying is, well, we were so. And the other thing they said, all of those points were voted on unanimously by their 40 hand-picked people that they brought in. Well, what about you don't even know what the points are.
Right.
Everything's transparent. Everything was voted on unanimously. Everybody there agreed on it. But what about that one that they're not talking about
exactly
anymore?
And that's the most important one. And how are they going to handle that?
And they're going into these memberships now. They're begging people to put their name on that thing. So what are you putting your name on? And that's, there's a lot of Angus Association members that didn't sign up for taking money from Jeff Bezos and measuring their methane output. And that's kind of the point of what we're talking about, what you're signing up for. And
got to be dang careful, because
next thing you know, you're funding the LA riots.
That's right. Or, some partnership with an ENGO that takes you off the land 10 years down the road, or takes your kids off the land. So, it's all it's all a money scheme. It's a money laundering scheme as far as I'm concerned. But I guess my idea and my thought is if they were there together to create debate, but you agreed on every aspect or every bullet point that you're going to talk about, then where's the debate? And if you're instructed not to talk about certain hot button issues in our industry, how are we ever going to move past or adopt or not adopt those issues?
Yeah, and
if you agree on everything, what's the point? It's just more of the same to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking about that wrong.
Yeah, maybe we're talking about it too much. But what they said, if you're not familiar, you couldn't talk about checkoff reform. You couldn't talk about mandated EIDs.
MCOOL.
You couldn't talk about MCOOL. And you couldn't talk about the cattle market, which I took as AMAs. Alternative marketing agreements versus cash.
Yeah.
In the cattle market. They weren't going to talk about those things because everybody doesn't agree on them.
Right.
And so, anyway. So, I guess our message for the cattle industry on that is watch your memberships, watch what you're putting your name on. And then you got into, which we might as well talk about some, is watch where, we are in the midst of the biggest transition of land ownership, as the older generation is now either dying or handing their land down. And one of the things that I think the mods, when I did a podcast with them, they made it very clear is you need to, everybody talks about transition plan, but also you need to look at these companies and these NGOs that are buying land. I did a podcast or a video here a little bit ago where Custer County, South Dakota, now has Patagonia through Holdfast Collective and the Nature Conservancy. They own over, I think, 30,000 acres, which is a giant chunk of this county. And so watch who you're selling your land to.
Well,
make sure your dad or your grandpa knows.
Well, the point is as legacy leavers, we have to decide what we're going to do. Are we going to take and sell out for the largest dollar, which is what's happening across America right now, which takes competition, you and me, out of the competition to come back to the ranch? I mean, there's a ranch beside me that's coming up for sale. They're going to ask $700 an acre on land that's worth $380 an acre. Can I compete with that? No, but every ENGO out there can.
Right.
And they'd love to have it. So as producers, we have to make a conscious decision. Is it about the land or is it about our legacy? What are we going to do? How are we going to leave it? I mean, my mother, she's got her transition deal all done. And
Where is she?
I don't know. She's cringing, but
She's here.
She's
Everybody
our goal is
congratulate-
to keep it in production, and we didn't take easement money where everybody around us took easement money, and because if we want to conserve it, that's our responsibility. We shouldn't have to be paid. That should come from the heart. And who are we to dictate from the grave what they can do in the future when nobody dictated from the grave what we can do? We love it. We want it to stay in production. And my goal, beyond her, I'll probably die before her because she'll kill me before we get home. But my goal, if she goes first and then I go, I want to get a young person back on the land. I'm sure my kid will not be a rancher. There's nobody else. So let's form partnerships. There's all kinds of ideas out there that we can utilize to get these kids back on the land. And we got to start focusing on it. And if you're truly a liberty maker, not a liberty taker, we're going to start putting that into motion on a serious level and get this money. It ain't all about the money, boys.
Right, especially when you got a foot in the grave.
That's right.
Well, we went fast.
Is it time to quit? Oh, we've got 30 minutes, bro. What are you going to talk
You
about?
can fill 30 minutes longer than I can.
I can't. Yeah, we'll take some questions.
If anybody has them. Otherwise,
Wild Jim will take some questions if he's got any. But I would like to point out, this is a pretty cool convention, and here's the reason why. Today we heard, Representative Harriet Hagman. We heard Tracy Hunt, Alex Newman, Margaret Byfield, Senator Rounds. We got social media fame. Josh Langworthy's here. AJ Richards, Ryan Griggs. This is awesome stuff, and we have people that are actually, want to have a future in the ag industry to come and learn here at RCAF. That's pretty cool.
well, one thing, do we have questions? Because we usually do a history segment,
Yeah, we do usually.
and we didn't plan one at all, but then we were sitting over there talking, and Shad's, well, you tell it,
What?
your connection to Deadwood.
Oh yeah. Well, maybe I've told that before.
Well, tell it again.
Well, in 2000,
We're here.
Yeah, I'm a storyteller, so I'll just tell it. In 2011, my dad was dying of cancer, and so we were up in Denver getting some treatments or planning the future, whatever. And he had a long lost cousin come up there and see him. I never knew this guy, and he says. He just happened to say, if you get to Lusk, Wyoming, you need to get in there and go to their museum. They got a cool museum, and we got some relation in there. Well, it just so happened that was the 2 driest years in the history of our business, right? And so we brought all the cattle out of Texas to Colorado. We had a very short window where we could graze those cattle, and in that window, my dad died. And so the day after he died, I came north, and I came to Wyoming, South Dakota, and Nebraska, and I drove up people's driveways, and I leased 3 ranches. That's how I did it, and we got it done.
You cold called?
I didn't even cold call. I would just get names at the co-op or the bank. I went into some banks and got names, and I'd go to their house and tell them the predicament I'm in. And we ended up leasing 3 ranches and brought, gosh dang, a bunch of cattle up here. Anyway, so I leased one at Lance Creek, Wyoming. That's where Heather's parents are from. And when I was there, I went in to Lusk to the museum, and I said, I understand that I have some relation in here, and this gentleman, very good gentleman, very smart, said, what's your name? Shad Sullivan. He's, oh yeah, you got some relation in here. And he brought out a packet about that thick, and he said, go upstairs and you're going to see what you got. Well, this packet contained a story about my 3rd great grandfather, whose name was Phillip Fred Sullivan, and he came to Wyoming as a teenage boy, and he grew up just by himself. And how he made his living was he became the fastest man. He was known as the fastest man in the West. He match raced people for money. That's how he fed himself. Well, as he grew up, he became a freighter.
He must have been smaller than you.
Oh yeah, he wasn't. That's not my line, right? My line is genetics. So look at that. So then anyway, he becomes a freighter, and from 1878 to 1882, he drove the Cheyenne Deadwood stage every day, or however often that was. And his stagecoach is in that museum in Lusk, Wyoming, along with his Stetson hat right now. It's a pretty cool story. And my dad had no idea that ever took place. I never knew anything about my dad's family other than they came from Wyoming to southeast Colorado around the turn of the century to homestead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, Grandpa Fred Frank was up
Phillip Fred Sullivan.
Phillip Fred was up here hanging out at the gym with Al Swearingen is what I was
Al Swearingen, and he's buried in Lusk. And eventually he became the sheriff of the Niobrara County in Wyoming. So pretty cool.
All right.
Anybody got any questions?
Yeah, I got one.
Oh, God.
So, Jim, a long time ago, you brought up the MMRV, the Measure, Monitor, Report, and Verify. And then now we've got this deal with the Angus Association and the EID. Where do you think that all goes?
I think it's all hooked together. And, I got a phone call a while back and they said it was someone from a state, it was South Dakota State, South Dakota Cattlemen's Association. He was telling me, these EIDs don't have anything to do with, measuring emissions or any of that stuff. This is all disease traceability. And then, I feel like I've been, get proven right almost.
All the time.
If you look at how the whole thing has, Adams Land and Cattle, we talked about them in 2023, they EID everything as soon as it hits their feedlot. They have software for the EID thing, and then they partner with Tyson to create a climate-friendly beef, and they go out and try to get everyone else to have EIDs. And, you talk about they're buying, I think, 250,000 head of cattle, or they have 250,000, I think, around there. And so you think about that cost of EIDs, everyone that comes in, and now they're mandated, and the government's paying for them, and that's not a cost for them anymore either. But yeah, the methane, that is the way you would track it. I've given a quote on here. I need to memorize it, but Tyson in their ESG report says the reason that they can't report on their suppliers' emissions is because they don't have a standard way of tracking them and collecting that data. And that was right. That was the year before the EID mandate came out.
Well, and I think one thing to show what they didn't really know it was going to come to, because it is all interwoven into the sustainable development model. But back in 2010, when the traceability committee at the largest cattlemen's organization in the United States, their traceability committee lead or head said we need it for traceability, for disease tracking, and we can wave a wand over your ranch and tell you how many cattle you have. Well, yeah, that was the problem. That's
right.
Nobody's business. But as we grew and these people become more entrenched in the idea of it, they also became more financially invested in it. And a lot of these people who are pushing it, if you do some background work on them, are invested in the companies. That gentleman owns part of Cattle Trace. It's just, and Cattle Trace isn't the only company, but they all have what my dad, an old timer, he'd say, that's an interesting conflict,
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting conflict. To get into Cattle Trace, that is who the NCBA wants to hold all of the data on EID tags. The chairman of the board of Cattle Trace is Mark Gardner. Mark Gardner is also the chairman of the board for U.S. Premium Beef. U.S. Premium Beef owns 15% of National Beef, the fourth largest beef packer in the country. You have a major shareholder who's the chairman of the board for a company that is a major shareholder of a beef packer, and he's also the chairman of the board of the company the NCBA wants to hold all of the information that goes on to EID tags. And they've came out and said, they've laughed and said I'm crazy and this isn't. It's all about traceability, but it's just becoming more and more apparent that it's all about measuring, monitoring, reporting, verify. Harriet just talked about how there's a fight at the USDA, a split at the USDA about these EID tags. The entire Biden administration USDA was focused on MMRV. That was their top priority, and they weren't shy about it. If you look up, measure, monitor, report, verify, it's still on USDA information.
Sure is.
And so when she says there's a fight at USDA, I'm sure there are still people at USDA who have put in a ton of time
Absolutely.
and are all in on this climate deal who aren't going to let it go.
And I think that's the importance of getting rid of the holdovers in all of these agencies, but especially USDA. Those people that adopted those thoughts and policies backed up when the transition came, and Trump, they said, we're going to get rid of all this stuff. It's still all on the website. It's still there. But to your point, the most important part of that MMRV is the verification, because under the Sustainable Development Model, their mantra is continuous improvement. So once you get to a point that they want you to produce at, they can raise the level, they can raise the bar. And so when you have a third-party individual or organization saying, okay, you got to get to here in order to enter the market and be rewarded for your hard work, no, they can say, oh, no, we got to raise the bar again. And so the verification part of MMRV is, to me, the most dangerous part, because it's subjective. There's no rules. And I don't want to participate in it as a freedom maker anyway.
And to get back into our positivity, I would say we are winning. If you go back into when I started Lonesome Lands and what I was writing about, plant-based companies who said, the CEO of Impossible Foods said, I think 10 years ago, he said, within 5 years, the cattle industry won't exist. It won't be recognizable because everybody's going to want to eat this plant-based stuff and the lab-raised stuff. And one thing that they've realized in the last 10 years is that's not happening. Consumers don't care about that stuff. They don't care about, this sustainability thing. We've been told for years and years that the sustainability is all the consumer cares about. That's not true. They don't care. The beef demand is rising, and there's not been any reduction in methane or any of that stuff. Like this climate neutrality stuff isn't happening, and beef demand is rising.
I submit today our consumers don't know what sustainability is.
Right.
I don't
think they care.
They don't care. They don't care, but they don't know what it is because it's never been defined. Josh.
I wanted to back up a little bit on the EID. As it stands right now, there's no current mandated reporting. That's some of the biggest arguments I've been getting into. Well, all it is a tag put in their ear. And if they transfer across state lines, it's just like your animal health certificate.
I guess that's another thing that came in the news last week. I mean, it's what you said, and we've talked about when it first came out, incrementalism. This, if you're going to stick a tag in an ear that can hold infinite amounts of data, what's the point of not putting data on it? It's a baby step towards forcing you to put whatever data they want on it. Just like they said, it's only on these, 18 months or older crossing state lines. Well, then everybody had their bangs vaccination, and your vet comes out and he only has one kind of tag, right? Which shows that that was just BS. It's not that you don't have to, that it's only crossing state lines. It's every breeding animal that you have that you want bangs vaccinated. And here last week, someone put on Facebook that there's an auction market, I think it was in Nebraska.
It was.
That if you're crossing, every calf that came in was getting an EID put into it so that it could cross into Kansas, because Kansas is saying you can't cross the state line without an EID tag in every animal. Every calf is what he put
under
up.
60.
Now, the follow-up there is the other rebuttal is, well, when the socialism aspect comes in, then we'll participate. The only response I have is, well, by that time it's too late. How do you convince these people who... Well,
to me, forcing you to put a tag in the ear, the socialism aspect is already there.
It's already there.
Yeah, you can talk about that.
Well, I don't know what there is to talk about. Once you give up your authority in production and consumption, you are in a socialistic, collectivistic society, and I think that's where we're at. How we come back is we fight against it. I think it was Tracy or somebody said, deny, 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 right? Go against it. Don't do it. Make the conscious choice. Ron?
Well, it's already written. The USDA already tipped their hat. It's in the rule.
It is.
They want it from birth to slaughter.
Yep. APHIS website.
Don't kid yourself. This isn't about traceability and crossing the state lines.
Right.
It's about control.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
All
Is that
right.
it? Go to lonesomelands. Oh, we got another one. I was going to say, go to lonesomelands.com, click subscribe, go to our store.
And thanks a
help
bunch
us.
for all the support.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have been really
Thank
supportive.
you. Go to Farm the Farm. But yeah, thanks to everybody here who's been subscribed and has helped me keep building this thing and get me going. Sorry, Eric. Go ahead, man.
Yesterday was the first time I heard about the $87,000 fine if we don't comply with this. So that was the question I had for Senator Rounds before he left. I said, okay, who has the authority to enforce that and how's it going to be enforced? He says, we've cut their money off. He said, they have no money to enforce this. So he says, it's going away. So I hope
Yeah.
I hope that's right, but I think there's a lot of legislators that don't really know how deep the abyss is into USDA. I can tell you that a lot of legislators out there don't even know about the Animal Care Division, and our partner with Mindy Patterson with the Cavalry Group has been trying to educate her members. Pay her a membership fee, and she represents them against anti-animal agriculture or showing or exhibition. And USDA has just tore those people up, fined them, sent them to jail, taken their private property from them. And so she goes on out to Washington, D.C. to talk to these legislators, and she says, Shad, they don't even know that there's an animal care division at USDA, which is controlling all of this method. So I submit to you, we all need to learn more about the depths of these rulemaking agencies, or they're not rulemaking agencies, they're just agencies, right? The rulemakers are supposed to be Congress. That's why it's very important, like Hagman said, to get rid of that Sustains Act. Because they don't have the authority to make rules, but they are making rules, and they're overwhelmed with these agenda pushers, these ideologues is what I call them, that want us to go a certain direction, and those people have been held over. We have got to clean the agencies out, in my opinion, and get good, I'm not going to say conservative, I prefer conservative, but we have to get people with integrity, character, and principle back into these agencies, because as we've seen with the mod case, they'll ruin your lives in a hurry, and they have ruined a lot of lives at USDA APHIS, and that's because of the holdovers. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and we've got to learn about them. How about that?
All right.
Jim's my boss. I just follow the lead.
See you next week.
All right. Adios.